Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name is Rory Paquette. You guys all know that already. I am, as always, your very grateful host. If you've been following us for any amount of time, you know how grateful I am, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to thank every one of you folks for everything that you've done for us lately. Ever since we moved to 5 days a week publishing, you folks have just showed up. You've turned out. You are liking, you're subscribing, you're sharing, you're sending DMs at an alarming rate, folks. I'm going to get to all of them. I promise. I really am. The ones about how the one day I didn't use the right coffee cup, those might take a minute for me to get to. All right, give me a break, guys. I had to do some dishwashing. All right, but other than that, you folks have been fantastic. Love y'all. And if you're not out there doing what you're doing, then I can't sit here doing what I'm doing. So eternally grateful. If you're a friend of the program, and I'm sure you are, then you know what time it is. It is time to pay some bills. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, good stuff. Really good stuff. And you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They're absolutely fantastic. It's a mean cup of Joe. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. And they support veterans, which you guys all know is incredibly important here at Power of Man. We support veterans as well. That's one of the reasons why we support them. Folks, Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell him Power of Man sent you. Now I'm going to get one more sip of this before I can keep up with this young guy across the table from me over here. All right. This guy's got quite the intro. So you might want to sit back just for a minute because he's busy. So we have with us seasoned pastor of 30 years, author of a couple of books, Our Fight and Parenting in a Culture War. He is a host on Maximum Life Radio. He is also a host of the podcast Code Red Talk. Folks, please welcome to the show Pastor Zach Terry. Sir, how you doing?
Thank you, Rory. It's good to be with you today. I'm checking out Freedom Hill Coffee
Right
as
on.
we speak. I need to get to know these guys. That looks amazing. Got a great website.
I drink this all day.
Oh yeah,
So absolutely. I hope you pick
we are
some up.
connoisseurs. We are connoisseurs here in North Florida. We've traveled all over the world, and so from the Middle East to South America, we've picked up coffee everywhere we go, and
My
so we're
goodness.
always looking to try something new.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I would love doing that. Driving around trying different coffees.
Well, and a lot of times, our friends in the world that we live in, our friends are worldwide. So they bring coffee with them from wherever they
Ah,
live. So we've spent a lot of time in Israel. We spent a lot of time in South America. And so we've always got new coffee that we're trying out. But then we have our mainstays that we go to. So a company that supports veterans would be right down our alley.
right on. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for all that. Now, and you're sitting here talking about how you travel around and that's your world. Tell everybody who is Pastor Zach Terry? You know, what are you about and what brings you here today, sir?
So we back in growing up in North Alabama in the 90s, my uncle was best friends with Johnny Cash. And so, to give you a little context, his name was Gordon Terry. You can look him up on YouTube, and he played fiddle for Merle Haggard and traveled with Johnny Cash. Um, and so that was kind of the world that I was born into was the entertainment world, traveling, crowds of people, putting on a show. That's what we did. And in 1994, I met Jesus Christ, and my life really, I didn't intend on so much to change. I had every intention of going to Nashville, doing that life, and just doing it as a Christian. And probably within 9 months, I was sensing a call into ministry. And for the last 30 years, the Lord has taken what we knew about audio production, about video, about messaging, marketing, which, it's called music business for a reason. And so we learned that side of it, and the Lord gave us a new message, preaching the word. And so we just, for the last 30 years, that's what I've been doing is making disciples of Jesus Christ and trying to do that in as many formats, whether it's audio, video, books, whatever it might be. all to the same end. It's just to help people know God better.
Love that. I mean, there isn't a better calling than that. So power to you.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
love hearing that. Now you mentioned almost casually, that you met Jesus Christ. Was there something that was there an event that took place, if you don't mind me asking? And feel
Yeah,
free
no,
to say, hey,
I
it's
was,
none
the
of my
way that I
business,
tell
but
it, I was minding my own business, listening to the radio. It was the first day of college, and I got to the University of North Alabama, again, studying commercial music to go to Nashville, and was flipping through the radio to wake myself up to find some good music. And if it was around Desert Storm, when Desert Storm was taking place, and I came across what I thought was the news, and I had friends who were in the service, and I wanted to find out what was going on. And so I stopped and I listened to what I thought was a news program. It ended up being Christian radio, and the minister shared the gospel. I'd grown up from the age of about 6. My dad was converted, and I'd grown up in a church environment, but it had never really gotten through to me.
hmm,
So, I was a good sinner. I was living pretty pedal to the metal in that world of music and entertainment. And this minister, Charles Stanley out of Atlanta, put the emphasis. He said, everything that was needed for you to be forgiven, for you to be innocent, for you to have a brand new start, was accomplished 2,000 years ago on the cross. And he explained that God made him who knew no sin to become sin on our behalf, that through him we could know the righteousness of God. And for me, I really thought if you asked me if was a Christian in 1994, I would say sure. But I really put the emphasis on what I did for God, that I walked the aisle, I said the sinner's prayer, I was baptized, I went to church, all
hmm,
those things. And Dr. Stanley put the emphasis on what Jesus did for me. And for whatever reason, that bothered me because I thought it was about something that I did for God, not what God did for me. And it haunted me for days. I went through drop ad. I dropped every course I had before noon, and I would listen from 7 o'clock to noon to radio preachers every single day. I couldn't get enough, and I was just fascinated and curious. And I remember at 11 o'clock, Chuck Swindoll would come on. I don't know if you know that name or not. He's a great Bible teacher.
yeah, I've heard it before. Yeah.
Swindoll had a unique voice, and when I would hear Swindoll's voice, I would always be in the Hardee's fast food parking lot eating a roast beef sandwich. And to this day, I crave roast beef when I hear his voice. But I just consumed all the truth I could, and somewhere in that season, came to know Christ. And over time, I got involved in a church and just discovered that I had an ability to take complicated concepts and simplify them so that the average person could understand it. And so that's really what I've done for all these years.
Nice, nice. So was it that meeting that led you to becoming a pastor then?
No, it was probably 9 months of uh, continuing to pursue what I had been doing in music and finding it less fulfilling. And then somewhere along the way, I mean, I'm from the South, and this may be more our vernacular, but it was an irrefutable calling that it got to the point in my life of, I felt like if I did not give my life to doing this, that I may not have a life much longer.
Hmm.
And so I did not want to do it if it was not the Lord calling me. And I had to settle that, so that's those climbing up on the mountaintop experiences and just begging for God to be clear. And it got to the point where it was clear. And I said yes and trusted him. Interestingly, when I was a little boy, I was 9 months old, and I had a kidney removed. which in 1977, that was dangerous. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
So it was life or death. They didn't know if they had to keep me alive long enough for me to get big enough for them to do that surgery. So when the day came that I called my father to tell him that God had called me into ministry, Dad had supported everything I'd ever done. He invested in our music, all this stuff. And then I called him and I said, Dad, I walked forward today at church and told the preacher God's calling me to preach. And Dad said, okay, here's the phone. Tell your mother. And I thought, okay, my heart sank. Dad's disappointed in me. He handed the phone to mom. Mom was like, son, I'm real proud of you. You're going to be a great preacher. God's going to use you. In a minute, she handed the phone back to my dad, and dad said, he said, I've been waiting on this phone call for 19 years.
Oh, wow.
And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, back when you had that surgery, as a little boy, God told me that you were not going to die, but you're going to live and be a preacher. And I said, well, you never mentioned that. And he said, I didn't want to influence you. So
Wow.
he supported everything I did. He, but he knew that that day would come. And there just like any other man, you have good days and bad days. But in the roughest of days, that confirmation that my dad gave me was it was just so valuable.
Wow. I mean, that probably was the right move to not tell you.
I'm grateful. I think it was wise because I would wonder, at times if maybe I did it
Right.
because he said that. He stayed out of it, and after God called me, I would go to Dad for advice, and he would advise me when he could. But if it got down to, should I go to this church? Should I take this opportunity? Dad, he looked at it as sacred. He wouldn't touch that. He said, that's not my business.
That's amazing. It's great to have that kind of a relationship with your father like that too.
Very fortunate.
Yeah. He's still with us?
No, Dad passed away about 10 years ago. The last couple of years, because of that situation when I was a child, they never had other children, so I was the only child.
Hmm.
And when Dad became sick, we moved he and Mom in with us, moved back to Alabama, and took care of them for a few years until he passed away. And then ultimately moved to Florida. Mother moved down here with us, and so we're taking care of, or she's here with us. We're not taking care of her, but we're the families together.
Nice. Sorry for your loss, but
Thank you.
it's great that you had that relationship with him.
Such a gift. Such a gift.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So that brings you into being a pastor. Of these other things, on your timeline, what came first? The books, the radio, the podcast? What was the
Well,
first step into
um,
all this media?
probably radio. I mean, I began, in 94 in my 20s. I used to be cool. My kids don't believe that, but I was cool back then. And I would travel around and do youth events and church events, and in the midst of that, a radio station said, "Why don't you do a weekly show, and we'll just take your sermons and run them on our program." And so we did that. This, before podcasting was a thing, but it was just taking that content and repurposing it, and then that became a daily program. So now it's really 6, 7 days a week in most places in Florida, and it's on during drive time in the morning. Usually here that can be anywhere from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And so somewhere in that space, there's a 30-minute program called Maximum Life that covers most of Florida and then scattered up the East Coast from there.
Nice. Very
And
nice.
then
So it's a
books.
syndicated program of some kind here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. We have to pay for some of the time and then some of it's syndicated out. But the books came. I heard a quote, a gentleman in Memphis, Tennessee. Steve Gaines said, he was talking to, I just overheard this, but it so impacted me. He said, who was the greatest preacher in the New Testament other than Jesus? Everybody has to say Jesus, but other than Jesus, who was the greatest preacher? And the guy said, well, I guess it would be Paul. And he said, I disagree with you. He said, I would argue that the greatest preacher in the New Testament was Apollos because the church at Corinth wrestled with, I am of Paul or I am of Apollos. And it said, if you read everything the New Testament says about this man, Apollos, he was obviously a very gifted orator. Priscilla and Aquila took him aside and taught him the gospel more clearly, but he was just a gifted communicator. He said, but the reason you said Paul is because Paul wrote things down. And he said, we
Hmm.
have nothing, unless he happened to write Hebrews, and some people argue he wrote Hebrews. It reads like it was written by a great orator. But other than that, we don't know of anything the man wrote. So capture your thoughts with the spear of a pen, he said. And so I've tried to do that with the books, the two books I've written.
Interesting. Love that. The subject matter of the books. I mean, the title is Our Fight. The other title is Parenting in a Culture War. I mean, that sounds fairly specific, in there. Sounds like you're, working towards a cause. Tell me about the books and, what's the purpose of each?
They're both, and I don't think I realized this until I'd written both of them, but they're probably both written from a man's perspective and with men in mind. We are militaristic in the way that we approach life.
Yeah.
There are battles to be won. And I guess probably I look at the world that way somewhat. I'm always reading a military biography or some history, but but our fight really dealt with the unseen battle in traveling ministry. Those things come to you. You have to deal with these things, whether it's legitimate demonic possession, whether it's just peculiar temptations, whatever it may be. And so if you're the guy from out of town who's in town for a week and then you're leaving, people will tell you things they won't tell their pastor. So we heard stories, we saw things happen that made it very real to us. And at some point, I taught on it, and it was a kind of thing. If you deal in that world, you're hesitant to speak on it. You're hesitant to talk about it, and people can tend to put you in a category when you do that I didn't desire to be in. So it took a while for us to write that book, but if you remember back when we were young, you would have these old survival guides that you could get in uh, like an army surplus store that would fit in your backpack, and
Sure.
it could help you make it out in the world. Well, this was meant to be that for the spiritual life. Saying you've got an enemy. The enemy is vastly more powerful than you are, but greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And it's equipping you to have a healthy perspective on Satan and demons. So I think one of the things I said in the book, if you go out today, it's a cloudy day in Florida, but if you go out on a cloudless day and you look at the sun is many times bigger than Earth. But if you take a quarter and you hold it close enough to your eye, it will totally obscure the light of the sun. A little bitty quarter. So perspective is very important. And when it comes to Satan, he's much bigger than us. But if we don't look at him at the right perspective, which is through the lens of truth and scripture, then it can obscure the fact that greater is he that is in us.
Hmm.
And so the book is just meant to kind of remind us of what's true, what scripture says, because so much of what is believed about Satan and demons is influenced by Dante's Inferno or secular writing over the years. And Scripture has much to say about it, but we're not as familiar with what the actual Bible says. And so it's really helping to educate us in that realm.
Hmm. Now that's both books
The
are that
second
way,
book, the second book is really speaking more into the culture war.
right?
So we're moving from the unseen battle to the battle of philosophy, worldview.
Hmm.
And you know, as a parent, um, and especially these younger guys listening who have younger kids, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to discern that there's someone out there who has plans and designs on our children.
Yeah.
And if we don't step into that gap and speak truth, then they're going to win, whether that's in the school system or whether that's in entertainment, social media, you name it. This is not a level playing field. So what we're trying to do with parenting in a culture war is equip parents to understand, whether it's gender, whether it's sexuality, whether it's worldview, socialism, Marxism, all of these different things. It's giving them a biblical framework to have the conversation.
Hmm.
We can't have the conversation for them, but we can equip them to have it with their children.
Interesting. Okay. So are there, I mean, is it just educational or are there action steps in the book type of thing?
At the end of each chapter, there are discussion guides
Oh,
because really we're our family, we have a routine of every week now with kids the age that they are, it happens probably about 3 nights a week that we would sit down around a round table. Julie would make an amazing meal and we would talk and we would have rules like no tech at the table. We would say one conversation at a time. So two of the kids aren't over here talking. We're one conversation at a time. Everybody's engaged. And that's really where we did discipleship. I find that easy
hmm.
because we've done it for so long, but the people that we minister to have found it difficult. So the book is written to give a primer to mom and dad to say, here's what's happening. Here's what you need to know about these conversations. Then at the end of each chapter, there's Q&A that kind of can lead as a discussion around whatever that chapter was about.
Interesting. So you're helping parents prepare their kids for their role in discipleship then.
Exactly. And
Nice.
so much of it, the kids will bring so much to the table that will educate mom and dad as well, because it's just the nature of reality that we're clueless as to what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, the world has changed so much in 30, 40 years. I mean, I think when I'm 49 and when I was a kid, I think 12 was the average age that a boy would see pornography for the first time. And that's far too young.
Yeah.
Today it's 4 and 5 years old. So it's just a different world.
Yeah.
And where we could live, we could be 21 and may have seen 3 or 4 magazines. Today, they've seen everything that's out there by that age.
Yeah.
So it's just not it's not the world we grew up in.
That's an understatement, but I'm with you 100%. It is not that world. Well, I love the idea behind the books then. You're helping parents to, set their kids up for the right thing. How does that play into the radio station slash the podcast?
So conversations, Jesus had two ways of teaching. It was monologue, the Sermon on the Mount, and then dialogue. And this would be John 3, conversation with Nicodemus.
Hmm.
And if you take all of the two ways of teaching, they're about 50-50. If anything, there's more dialogue than monologue in the teaching of Jesus. So, as a minister, we didn't want to leave uh, our reduce a ministry down to just monologue, just preaching. in doing that, you can get off course so fast because you're answering questions nobody's asking, or you're fighting battles that nobody's waging. So when would enter into, we just throughout ministry believe that it's important to stay close to your people, to listen to them, to find out what they're actually dealing with, and then lead conversations around that the same way we would with our children. So the podcast, the radio program Code Red is just that. It's talking to people who are on the point of the spear when it comes to cultural change and uh, gospel impact, whether it's on a third world mission field or whether it's in Congress. It's bringing people into the room and just like you, no holds barred. We're going to talk about whatever comes to mind and find out what's really happening and what we can do to change things.
Nice. You mentioned in the pre-interview that you have a lot of guests on your podcast. Where do those guests come from? Do you have a theme? What types of guests do you bring on?
Some of our guests, it's been very organic. We've not been intentional about who we've brought on, but some of them, I think it began probably just like yours in the early days. It's people that we were just interested in having a conversation with.
Sure.
So we had one young lady. If you had to pick one and say this is where I would start, there was an episode of a young lady who was a a lesbian. She was married. They had adopted a child, and in that world, as far as you could get into that world, who came to Christ under our ministry and transitioned out of it. And it was the most interesting conversation just to hear, what that meant, what
Hmm.
that looked like for her, and how the world that had been so accepting to her suddenly did not accept her anymore. And it was, so that you've got those kind of uh, conversion stories. We've got people who've planted hundreds of churches in Africa that would tell the stories of engaging with witchcraft and the witch doctors that were making child sacrifices, that's still happening in our world. And so Shannon Hurley talked about that. We've got we've had congressmen who've come on and talked about what God's doing in the halls of power. General Michael Flynn is coming on soon, and
Wow.
he's you went through is considered two of the most dangerous people by Barack Obama. One of them was Putin. The other one was Michael Flynn. And so we're going to talk about that. Why did Barack Obama consider him that dangerous? And why is Trump now appointing him to serve in his administration? So it's just grown that way. And we try to, this past week, we were in Nashville, Tennessee with the president of the Southern Baptist Convention talking about that movement and what has happened with so many other denominations happen with the SBC. So it's really just things that we're interested in, and hopefully our audience will be as well.
I mean, you certainly are pulling out all the stops and communicating your message. So I mean, you seem to have all of the different legs of media out there. You've got the books, the podcast, the radio, and so on. I mean, and you're doing it in person because you're still preaching a sermon every week, right?
Right, right. And the nature of where we're at, I've never heard of this area before we came here, but it's a unique place. It's a resort community. It's on Amelia Island in Florida, just off the coast of Florida.
Hmm.
And the nature of that little island is some really interesting people pass through. And John Grisham lives on our island. Oprah comes through. There's a big car show that they have every year. So there are guests that we can get just by nature of where we're at, that if we had the same show in a different location, we probably wouldn't be able to pull it off.
Interesting. All right. Now you have all this going. You're getting the word out. What's the end game look like for you? What's the overall purpose of having all these things out there into the world, um, spreading this message?
You know, um, I'm trying to think of which movie it was, one of the Rockies, where Rocky Balboa said something to the effect of, I'm going in and I'm fighting this battle just to prove that my life was worth living. And to some degree, I know that I don't have to do that. I know God has declared that your life is worthy. I've paid a great price for you. But I guess like any man, when it's all said and done, I just want to feel like I've made the biggest dent I could make with what I had to work with. That the footsteps were deep, that we left our mark. Not for any, I could care less if anybody remembers me when it's all said and done. But when it's all finished, I hope that that the Lord looks at it and believes I did the best I could to make a difference.
Wow. I love your passion for what you're doing. I mean, obviously, it comes right through the screen. With your projects and how you feel about it all.
I don't think it's unique. I think every man feels that, and we try to I guess make our life count, in some way. We may do it differently, but when it's all said and done, you just want to feel like that it was worth it.
Sure, sure. One of the biggest things I talk to in our private groups, I talk to men about is that sense of purpose, feeling like when you wake up in the morning, you have a reason to be there. And then there's more for you to do. Even with all this going on, I'm guessing that you still wake up every morning thinking, I got a whole lot more to do.
Yeah, and I think that we all have to remind ourselves and recenter, you know, because it's easy. It's difficult, I think, for a man to realize that he can't do everything and he's not supposed to do everything. But figuring out what is it that you can uniquely bring to the table in the kingdom that other people might want to do and not be able to. If the Lord were consulting with me and if he said, "How do you want me to use you?" I wanted to be Billy Graham. I wanted to stand up and preach to lost people and just see, tens of thousands of people come to Christ. And I really tried to do that, but it seemed like I was pushing a boulder uphill. As bad as I wanted to do that, and I felt like I knew something about it, and I saw a lot of people come to Christ, but I never felt like I was in the zone. You know what I mean by that? If you
Mhm.
play golf, when you just hit that real estate on that ball just right, it never felt that way. So for whatever reason, when it came to doing the podcast, doing media, things that were very difficult for some people were easier for me. So that helped me kind of identify. So this is the zone. This is where I'm supposed to be. Getting, lining up an interview with a three-star general or a congressman, um, we could do that. I don't know why. It's not my job to know why God didn't give me the gift I wanted, but made it, but I am responsible for it. So looking at it and saying, okay, that's fine. It's his business, not mine. But if he's gonna equip me and give me the ability to do these videos and raise up people to donate to make it possible, then I want to be faithful with it.
Nice. I've heard it said that he doesn't always give you what you want, but he always gives you what you need.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. What what's next for Pastor Zach Terry in all of this? I mean, what's the next step towards getting this word out even more? I mean, with all the legs you have built already,
Yeah,
what are you going to build on top of this?
I think with a lot of, the church, we're building the church at the same time here. And so First Baptist Church, Fernandina Beach is rocking, man. It's growing. And Sunday was 1,500 people on
Wow.
campus. So it's a growing church for a small area. In Chicago, that's not a big church, but in Fernandina Beach, that's a big church. Um, so day by day, whether it's expanding the radio reach or building things that way, we're looking kind of for what's next. But I think right now, probably true of your program as it is for us, it's just staying consistent and faithful, knowing that we're still new to this. So you asked earlier, I think it's 21, 22 episodes that we've done. Some of those have kind of gotten viral. The Megan Basham episode had 80,000 plus.
Wow.
Most of them are, a few hundred. I'm assuming that's probably going to stay the same for a long time. And then at some point, if he wants to do something with it, it'll take off. But I think right now we're just producing the content. Eugene Peterson called it long obedience in the same direction that makes the big difference.
To grow those types of things, yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely, for sure.
How long have you been doing this, Roy?
I've been podcasting for 5 years.
So are you in your daily that whole time, or
No, when I first started, I was twice a week with one podcast, and
was
now
there was
I'm
there a tipping point when it really kind of went to a new level, or
um, yeah, I decided that I wanted to find a way to make this a full-time operation, and I really dove into it hard and started doing what I needed to do on social media and not there to kind of get the word out. And I started giving away more service, in terms of coaching and stuff like that for free to get some people in. And I just said, look, I'm going to just make this happen, you know,
yeah,
because I really felt like it was where I was supposed to be.
yeah.
I've always felt like I was called to do this,
So
and
that's
ever since I
similar,
started it,
very
hasn't.
similar.
Yeah.
And there are days when you wake up and you think, I think it's working, you know, um, but there's part of me that can look at a Joe Rogan and go, man, we're so far, from that is
Right.
it worth doing it? But again, our job is to show up and be faithful, be wise as we can, but at the same time, um, in this space, I think faithfulness is huge. I think what most podcasts make 9 episodes or less.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, I think just staying with it and letting organically your audience grow is just important.
Yeah. Very, very. But no, I love that. I love the message. And I mean, you've gone through a lot trying to bring this message out. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this little tidbit that we've got on you over here about being trapped in Israel
Yeah.
in 2023, trying to spread the word. What in the world happened there?
Anytime you travel, there's always a chance things could go wrong, but you really never believe it will. And we had 54, I think it was, people. We'll do these history tours basically, where we take the things that we've been teaching in the pulpit and say, okay, let's go look at it firsthand. So it's a little bit of archaeology, tourism, and coaching, teaching all wrapped together. So I think it was a 12-day tour, and we were in Galilee, very close. I literally was within, I could reach out and touch the border with Lebanon. And we'd been on the Sea of Galilee. And as we were leaving, you typically, there's a predictable, this was probably our fifth trip, and there's a predictable when you get off the boat, you go to this museum and you see the boat they call the Jesus boat that was from the time of Christ. And our tour guide took us to the buses and we started to leave. And I said, what's going on? And he said, he showed me on his cell phone a video that the world didn't see. You know, what you saw was edited, it was redacted. What happened on that day was absolutely horrifying. Um, Pregnant women, I mean, I can't even describe it. It was horrific. So he showed me a video and he said, this just happened. We are under attack. So at that time, it was probably maybe 11, 12 o'clock in Israel, and everybody was in bed here. So we had to get to a safe place and let the world know that we're okay back home. And so for the next 4 or 5 days, as that war was escalating, we're trapped in Israel. We could not get out. They shut down Tel Aviv airport, and we started. Every day I would get up and it would be an interview with Fox News or Inside Edition or CNN or whoever it was. And we took those because we felt like it would create some momentum back home for the government to get involved and help us get out. And it did. Eventually, a gentleman, a very wealthy man in Atlanta, Georgia, reached out and he said, I can get you out, but it's going to be, um, he said, I can get you and your wife out, and then we can get the others out over time. And I said, I can't do that. I'm the leader. I can't go out first. We'll be the last ones to go. You can put the mothers of young children, the elderly ladies first. We'll go out last. And he said, that's what I wanted to hear. He said, we'll have everybody out within a week. And so he paid for us all to we had to go through Jordan, and we kind of made it through the border there, and they were shut down. But we got to Amman, and this gentleman made it possible to fly us all home. And
Wow.
so it was, now we know things can happen when you travel.
Yeah. So a privately funded citizen had to get you out of there.
Yeah, yeah, he did it though, and frankly, it was pretty amazing just being an American over in Israel. But the State Department called on our trip. We had a two-star general, we had a nuclear physicist that worked on submarines because we have a big sub base here, and then a Georgia senator was on this trip. So the State Department called and they said, Mr. Terry, we're going to keep communicating with you. You've got some high value targets. So if we tell you don't go into certain areas, then you just need to trust us that we're doing this to help you. And I said, certainly. And I said, now, right now, I'm at the corner of, and they said, Mr. Terry, we know exactly where you are. We're pinging the phones of everybody on that trip regularly to keep track of where you're located. And so that was interesting to see the technology they had and the resources. But with that said, they could not get us home. Uh, Nobody could get us home, but this one civilian stepped in and made it happen. As
I mean, you had
far as
plenty,
us now,
you had plenty of brass over there.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
It just shows, and to this day, I think that's been one of the most fascinating things as I've had some of these conversations. Regular people are moving the needle more now than I've ever seen in my life. And I'm talking legitimate operations taking place to make sure that our democracy survives. And it's unreal. It's unreal.
well, I'm really glad to hear that it went the way it did. Obviously, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, and you know, would have could have ended a whole lot worse. So, thank God for that. I'm sure that you have.
Yeah, it
But
became real though. You can imagine standing on the Mount of Olives reading Matthew 24 and seeing smoke rising over Gaza, um, it became it became real. We would be in a bus, and the Israelis have apps on their phone. If a missile's coming their direction, they get notified the way we would of a storm. And we were driving down through Jerusalem, and the bus driver would pull over, people would start getting out of their car and covering their heads. We thought they were praying. And he said, no, he said the app notified everybody that a missile's incoming. And the way that the Iron Dome works, when Gaza would shoot a missile, or Iran or whoever was doing these missiles, I'm not, the numbers aren't right, but let's just say it's $100 missile coming in. What the Iron Dome has to shoot to intercept it, that's $1,000 missile. So they will intentionally let some of these missiles get through because it's just not worth it to shoot them down. So from the time it launches, they know where it's going to land. If they know this missile is going to land in the middle of a field, they let it pass through and they just give you a notification to take cover. So that was happening all through this trip. We would go out and we would hear automatic weapons, and just, how many movies have we seen where there's that kind of warfare? But you just, I wasn't in the service, so I didn't see this firsthand. But I would walk out on my balcony at the hotel and we'd hear automatic weapon just down below us. And it would be like, okay, I guess I probably should go inside. It all became real.
It's amazing that people just live that way
It is.
every
And
day.
that was the thing. It wasn't that bizarre for them.
Right. And for you or for me or anybody else, we're like, this is madness. What are we doing
Oh
here?
yeah. No, how do you survive with this?
Amazing.
But for them, they were remarkably calm, cool, and collected about it because they'd grown up with those kind of things happening.
Crazy. Well, it's quite the world that we live in. The message that you're spreading is vitally needed right now, and I think probably more than ever before, at least in my lifetime. I've seen a lot of youth movements, a lot of hey, free choice, this and that, and that kind of thing, free thought, all these things. But I haven't seen this type of thing where we're actually questioning whether or not evil is behind the things that we're seeing in my lifetime. And I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, it seems like we really are in kind of code red, to use
Yeah.
your podcast lingo.
Yeah.
What do we do as as Christians, as people who are trying to live right and help our neighbor? What do we do to start to change things?
Well, in my perspective, my opinion, I think things like what we're doing here is very helpful. I don't think they're the most important. I think guys like us who, for whatever reason, we can do this, should do this. But I think the most powerful weapon that a man has, if he's a 20 something, is get married, have kids, go to church, be faithful. Just try to be an ordinary guy that loves God, loves his family. And if we could see the war room of the enemy, I think that's what terrifies it. It's not a preacher, it's not the best-selling books or any of those kind of things. I really think it's the ordinary guy who just loves God, loves his family, long obedience in the same direction. Um, that's the most powerful weapon we have, in my opinion.
Love that. Love that. I've said some similar things, but that was perfect. That was perfect. As we kind of bring this together, and as we kind of bring this down to a close, just for the sake of time, really enjoyed the conversation with you. I'm
Amen.
really really grateful for you to come on today and talk about all these different things. I want to give you the floor though for a couple minutes and just say, hey, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to make sure you get out today? Is there something that maybe we talked about and you just want to like drive home, a little bit harder? Or maybe one last piece of advice, a nugget or something, leave behind for the audience. The floor is yours.
Well, the reason that we jumped on these podcast apps where we meet other people doing what we're doing and all of that is just to share our audiences and spread our what we can offer to people. And so I would just encourage your audience to check out what we do. I'm sure the link will be in the show notes, but it's zachterry.com, ZACHTERRY.com, and everything else is there. So Code Red is there, our sermon videos, all of that is there. But you're in a battle, and we think of ourselves as kind of an army surplus store for the battle of life that we find ourselves in. So you want some good camo, you want some, you know, that's where you go. We'll try to give you some weapons and some ammo, and in the spiritual battlefield that we find ourselves in, we're outfitters for that. So let us help you if we can. If we can't, maybe we can put you in touch with someone who can.
Love it. All right. Seasoned pastor of 30 years, author, speaker, radio and podcast host, Pastor Zach Terry. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, brother. Sharing, everything that you have and, just putting that out there for everybody. I really, really
Honored to
appreciate it.
be on. Honored to be on. And come see us if you're ever in North Florida.
Oh, 100%. All right, folks. That's been another episode of the Power of Man podcast. And the reason that we bring on powerful men like this with very powerful messages for you and for your family is because, we're trying to help you with your goal of being able to protect, provide, and lead your family into the future, being able to be a better father or husband tomorrow than you are today. And at the bottom of it all, the reason that we do this is because you and your family, you have value and you are worth it. You're worth fighting for. And at some point, all you have to do is believe it. Until next time.